Welcome. I'm Glenn Anderson with the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation. For 28 years, this TV series has explored a wide variety of issues related to peace, social justice, economic justice, the environment, and nonviolent social change. We live in an area where clean, safe drinking water is available, but half the people in the world lack access to clean water and sanitation. Every day, 2,000 children die from diarrhea caused by unsafe drinking water and poor sanitation. That's the equivalent of 100 kindergarten classes dying every day for lack of safe drinking water and sanitation. Many past and present wars are fought over land and oil. In the future, many of tomorrow's wars will be about control and access to clean water. During this hour, we will look at problems and some simple, practical solutions. We'll lift up the work of a local nonprofit organization, Friendly Water for the World, which relies entirely on volunteers and voluntary donations to conduct its work in several African countries and also in India, Afghanistan, and Honduras. Their website is www.friendlywater.net. Friendly Water for the World uses simple, low-cost technology and information to help people get access to clean water. Friendly Water's method helps people empower themselves in the process of creating clean water solutions. Our three guests are active with Friendly Water for the World. Wayne Medrud is Friendly Water's Chief Technical Advisor. Wayne taught BioSand Water Filter construction in India, Burundi, and Uganda. Ginny Stern is Friendly Water's treasurer and a board member. She also helps with local training. Ginny has decades of experience as a professional hydrogeologist for the Office of Drinking Water within the Washington State Department of Health. Dennis Mills is a founding board member of Friendly Water for the World. Dennis provides web and video support and serves on the Education Committee. So welcome, glad you're all here. We'll have an interesting time. I know some people in the community might have heard about Friendly Water but not really know what it works, how the stuff goes, and they'll be interested in finding out more. And I'm sure this is new to a lot of people who are watching this. So thanks, we'll have a good time. Ginny, you have decades of experience as a professional working the science end of clean water. Tell us how many people around the world get sick or die because of unsafe drinking water.
Well, you had a pretty good reference in the beginning. Clearly, over 1/3 of the world's population does not get clean and safe, reliable drinking water. They can't count on it. And so hundreds of thousands, nearly 3/4 people can die each year from waterborne diseases and illness. And unfortunately, the biggest threat is to infants, children under the age of 5, through complications and illnesses like diarrhea and dysentery. And so access to clean water in the developing world not only lets babies grow up to be young children, they go on to school, they become families, they raise families of their own, but it also changes the lives of their families because you're not dealing with an infant mortality rate of 1 in 5 in your family. So those are things we just don't deal with in this world. In our side of the world, we're used to safe and reliable water. You turn on the tap, you get clean water.
Yeah. Why scientifically is it unsafe? What's
Well, that's a good question, but it's a simple question, and it pretty much works all over the world. It is what we throw away and what we remove from our bodies and animals' bodies is what contaminates the water supplies. It's pathogens and bacteria, protozoans, and viruses that are discarded through human and animal waste mostly into the environment, streams and rivers and dirt, and it can contaminate the streams and the wells and the groundwater and lakes. And unfortunately, in many of the developing world where they don't have the advantage of having clean water at one part and dispose of their dirty water over here, they're so close together they often cross-contaminate. And so it's a major source of illness and disease.
Yeah, rivers get used as both the water supply and the
Exactly. This
sewer.
person up here is putting the waste in the river, and this person down here is pulling their drinking water out of the river.
And even people in our area who go hiking in the mountains think, oh, here's this nice clean stream, and there's bugs in there.
Well, they assume that the water is pure because it's clear.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And Ginny, what is the problem if I take a glass of ice cold water that came down from the river? What might happen to my
system? The most
system?
common threat would be Giardia, which is a parasite that comes from warm-blooded and animals and is discharged along with waste. And other types would be Cryptosporidia and just general coliform bacteria, E. coli, all the kinds of things that make us sick. If they make a warm-blooded animal sick, they can make us sick. Yeah. Okay. And so that's what we're trying to remove.
So we have a diagram of a BioSand water filter, and we actually have a model in front of us. The work of Friendly Water for the World is providing these, and this is a model not full size. Full size is what, like 3 feet tall?
About 3 feet tall, about a foot square.
Yeah, okay. And this is the model that you folks are using, the technology, the simple technology, so people can purify the water to be safe for drinking. And we have this model that Wayne had provided. And can you tell us, Wayne, how this works?
Well, normal Egyptian sand filters have been used for 5,000 years, and they're very effective. And what they do is they filter out large amoeba and protozoa mechanically, just by the large stuff not being able to pass through the grains of sand. In our concrete filter,
concrete or the actual ones?
The actual physical filters. Yeah. More than 6 inches deep in that sand, there's no light and no oxygen, and you'll have an anaerobic die-off. There's just nothing, elements for them to live. Then, because of the size of sand that we select, it's 0.7 millimeters or less, and it is quarry sand or sand from a sand quarry, high bank river sand. It's sharp points and flat surfaces, and there's almost an electrostatic charge that is set up that it pulls those microscopic particles to it. And it's just clung there until they're dead and they calcify there. But the unique thing about a BioSand filter is the 2 inches of standing water that is inherent in the design in this, where the bugs, the pathogens are confined, they get hungry, and when you put a batch of water in, the dominant species cannibalizes the other pathogens, and as the bodies fall to the sand, it forms a slime layer called the schmutzdeck, and that further filters the sand. I've heard in some terms that in cases 80% of the bacteria can be removed in that water layer before the water ever filters through the sand.
So what happens is people will put water from their whatever their supply is, the river, the stream, the well, whatever, in the top, and it works its way through, and then people can see on the side closest to Dennis, there's an outlet.
We won't really pour water into the filter, but if you were at home, there would be water standing in the filter about this high in this area, and the area below would be full, the sand would be full of water from the last time it was used. Saturated. Yeah. So the person in the household would pour their bucket of dirty water into the top, and that water would, through gravity, push the first few layers out the bottom of the filter, and it actually comes out the nozzles on the side. Now in this model, the tube is on the outside. In a real model, it's actually built right into the filter. And so gravity does the work of pushing the dirty water pushes the clean water through the sand, and through that process it takes advantages of all the cleaning mechanisms that, that Wayne was able to describe, the biological layer on top, the anaerobic conditions in the filter, and the physical filtration that a column of 3 feet of sand can remove.
So the term BioSand Water Filter is exactly precisely what it does.
And
Yes.
it's based on, as Wayne mentioned, sand filtration goes way back in time, but this particular technology is a modification of what's called a slow sand filter, which is commonly used in wastewater treatment plants throughout the United States, as well as drinking water plants. And so it's a beautiful adaptation of a well-established technology, but it's made so that someone in a community can build it with local materials. They can dig holes, dig up dirt, build the sand, and
Jenny, why don't you tell our viewing audience what this unusual thing is for and why we
that's a
build
good
it?
point. As Wayne was mentioning, one of the things that happen in that top layer of water is that the biological organisms, the bacteria and the protozoans, they feed on each other. And their carcasses fall to the bottom and make a small slimy layer at the top of the sand. Well, that's a part of the filtration process, but every time I pour water in, if I pour it on top of it, I disturb it. And so this plate is built to fit inside the filter to just keep the water broken up so it doesn't disturb the biological activity that's going on. So again, a very
It's
simple,
sprinkling on down.
a very simple piece of technology that keeps the whole system working together.
And this thing does not need batteries, does not need electricity, does not need...
It's made out of concrete and cement that they can mix in. The material that they don't use to fill the filter, they use to mix in with the cement so that they have the rest of the aggregate that goes into the cement. This particular models have gravel at the bottom, and the gravel keeps the sediment from above clogging the pipes to keep the tube to keep the water from going out. So it can run simply and mechanically without any outside intervention. And if it starts to slow down, there's simple maintenance that can be done, literally splashing the water out to keep it working.
And this is good for, we estimate, 30 years?
Yeah, this can...
more.
Or more.
And we're talking about a household-sized treatment device that anyone can have in their house and meet their daily demands. And in fact, we know they're used where one filter may meet multiple families' demands.
Under ideal conditions, this should filter about 84 liters a day. 12 liters.
Okay, how much is that in measurement terms that people in this country know about?
A little over 20 gallons.
Okay. Okay.
And
A liter is about a quart, roughly.
yes.
So 84 would be 20 gallons.
Yeah. Each batch would be 12 liters or 3 gallons, and it'll filter that in about 30 to 45 minutes.
Oh, that's
It starts
very
out
efficient.
fast because it's the weight of this first volume of water, and that pushes the water from the bottom. And then there, as it moves down, it slows down because it has less pressure. And so that's why it may start out quicker, but it takes about 45 minutes to an hour under normal circumstances for it to go. And then you can use it multiple times in a 24-hour period.
And we encourage a rest time in between the first pouring of the dirty water inside. And that's so that the biological layer has a chance to recharge itself.
Well, and
Get hungry again.
Well, and the other part of it is, remember, one of the critical one of the multiple barriers for bugs here is the anaerobic conditions. So you want the water to sit. You want the bugs to travel through a non-oxygenated environment so that they die. So there's a pattern of use that's pretty easy to teach people how to use, easy to maintain, and it reinforces the effectiveness of the filter over time.
We'll talk about the training later, because that's the crucial
And some
part
of
what
those
you're doing.
filters are very elaborately decorated, and some even covered with wood or tiles or painted.
So they become a part of the household.
So it becomes part of that.
Nice.
This, however, is a teaching filter. And Wayne, you were with David Elbert in India when he used a model just like this at the Ganges River to demonstrate. And what did he do?
Well, we actually dipped dirty water out of the Ganges River, and in front of 100, 200 people, we poured that dirty water in, and David took a glass and took the clean, clear water.
Clean water coming out the bottom.
Coming out and drank it in front of the Minister of Education and Water. And
so the picture you're watching now on your television screen is the amazed look that people had when they saw people drinking water from the Ganges.
And his statement then was, I want BioSand filters in all 16,000 schools in the state of Uttarakhand in northern India, serving 4 million kids.
Yeah, that's great. So how do people actually make the body of the filter? How do they get the sand? The construction process, Wayne, how do they do that?
Well, sand can be sourced from a quarry, rock quarry or sand quarry. If that's not available, it can be sourced from a high bank river or, in a lesser case, a river bottom. In Rishikesh, India, we had it hauled in on donkeys in packs.
Now people you have a steel mold that people use for shaping the concrete body?
Yes. When we do a training in the country, we'll go early, get with a local welder, provide him with the blueprints and the materials, and try to oversee the process that the filter mold gets welded precisely.
What we're producing is a reproducible mold. It's in 3 pieces, 4 pieces, 3 pieces.
3 pieces.
That they bolt together, that you can pour cement in, concrete, and when it's cured and dried, you take the mold apart and you're left with the canister that it becomes the housing of the filter. In the process of building it, they're sorting and sifting the material that will also become the filler.
Yeah. So what people see here is one that is clear that they can see inside it.
The clear would be concrete.
The real one is concrete.
Exactly.
This is just so you can see the
Exactly.
model.
And we did it because it's, when you're looking at a concrete box, it's hard to tell them what's going on inside.
Right.
And what we found was, we had pictures, but when we were able to bring models, both this and a smaller model that we use, the light goes on instantly. People understand how it works.
Right.
They may not completely understand the science, but they physically can put the pieces together, and it goes a long way.
We've had people now in parts of Africa that want to buy this model because they can use that as a teaching tool. Matter of fact, the first time that we had projects in Kenya, they took water from this, the Ministry of Water Quality, whatever it might be called there, took it, had it tested, and came back, and then asked Dell, where did you get this water?
They didn't believe it had come out of the filter.
And he said, it's the cleanest water we've seen in all of Kenya. Well, we didn't realize that because it was just a teaching model for us.
Now, we know how it works, and I wonder, Ginny, if you could tell us how well it works.
Well, that's a very important distinction, because while this is a really powerful and effective disinfection system, it removes pathogens and biological contaminants and things that might make people sick. It's not intended or designed to be the tool to remove a range of exotic chemicals, because it relies on biological breakdown.
Right.
So it's not very effective at removing nitrates. It won't remove certain kinds of chemicals and pesticides. It does a very good job on those biological factors and some other constituents, such as arsenic, and under certain circumstances it can be modified for iron and for fluoride.
Okay, so like for the microorganisms that cause the diseases, what percentage typically is removed?
Well, that's what's really wonderful. The filter, as it lives, just as a filter, if you didn't even have all the bio pieces working on it, removes 75% of whatever goes in, because it's a filtration system. When you start adding on the biological layer in the standing water, the schmuckdecke, and the anaerobic conditions with time, these filters, once they start working, it takes a couple of weeks to get up to full effectiveness, they can remove in the high 90s of pathogens, bacteria, protozoa, and viruses. And they get better with time. The more developed this environmental layer up here is, the more effective the filter is.
Okay, now you mentioned some of these mineral contaminants, things like arsenic and whatever. You know about this as well?
There's a young lady, a grad student right here at Evergreen College that did her master's thesis on the ability of these to remove arsenic. And
which is often naturally occurring.
That's what we're saying with a naturally occurring contaminant.
It's a big problem in many parts of India and I believe in Morocco, other parts of the world as well. But she proved over an 8-month period of time, testing 6 of these on many parts per billion variation, that she could remove 99.6% of the arsenic.
That's impressive.
At the highest level that they had 2,500 parts per billion arsenic in the source water and dropped it to 7.
And you told me on the phone that putting nails in there.
And that's how they do it.
Yes.
They modify this by having a basket of nails, of iron nails, because chemically, iron and arsenic can exchange, and it'll bond onto the arsenic will bond onto the nails, and that will stay there, and it will be then the water that moves free is free of arsenic.
The iron oxide, the rust, becomes arsenic oxide, and it's bound.
And so it's called an ion exchange process, and it's what home softeners, water softeners are for other kinds of metals. It's just for this particular one, by using iron, they can remove arsenic. And so you just take out the nails every so often and put new ones in.
Now that's not a galvanized nail.
No, you don't want to put the zinc in there. Now, Dennis, you told me on the phone when we were preparing for the interview here that the sense of this came out of Alberta, Canada. Tell us.
Yes, Dr. David Mentz in 1993 developed this. He knew about the technology of the slow sand filter because it's been out for years. But then as he was studying the whole biological thing, he started experimenting with this, and this has gone through, well, we're in Model 10 now.
Version 10, yes.
And so there's been a long derivation of that. And he patented this technology and gave it to the world for free. He has about, and this is out of the University of Calgary, and Dr. Mentz has about 400 clients, of which we were one, and are in about 63 different countries or so. So there's been tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands.
Actually, they have estimates right now on the COST website that they estimate that over 200,000 BioSand filters are in use around the world today.
No, Ginny mentioned the word cost.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. That's CAWST.
Yeah. So we'll spell that out. His organization, the Center for Affordable Water and Sanitation Technology, and we'll put the website on the screen, www.cawst.org.
And they've been very generous with sharing manuals on how to build this, videos,
training tools.
Yeah,
everything, and including tools for kids. They have a site for teachers to work with students so that they become water wise.
And one of the challenges, if you have 200,000 of these out there, and we have projects that have gone in 10 different countries. So what language do you do it in? How do you do it? And so one of the things that the Center for Affordable and Water Sanitation Technology has done is they've developed picture guides. So when we want to talk about how it works or how to have safe household practices, they're pictures. And there's culturally appropriate pictures as well, so it helps.
Yeah, you get into some small local areas in remote places.
Reading's not a part of the...
they don't do reading, and they don't even speak in the dominant language. They've got a tribal or a regional thing that,
Well, and we found this out in India. There's something like 67 major dialects, and so we did provide training tools in Hindi as well as English, but that may not be the language you use.
The training we did in Bangalore, I think we had 4 or 5 different interpreters for 60-some students.
Yeah. Okay, Dennis, tell us just briefly here about how Friendly Water for the World began in Tacoma and Olympia, and we're pretty tight on time, so if we can keep it short.
A number of years back, a retired couple, Dell and Suzanne Livingston, have been going to Africa and they learned through COST, how to do this particular project, and they needed to raise money. And they approached our chairman, David Elbert, who says he doesn't you know, he's not an expert in this. He loves doing this. Yeah. And he says, well, we can help you. And we raised the money, and they had a very successful time. About 5 years later, we determined that the time was right, that we could have both his organization, or his church that he belonged to, joined with Olympia Friends meeting, and they're diverse Quaker groups. Yeah. And so for the first time, these two groups were coming together underwater, and so we formed Friendly Water for the World, because that came from the word friend, and friend is often a term used for a Quaker, capital F.
Yeah, the Religious Society of Friends.
But we're not limited to friends.
But we're not limited.
Right.
Yeah, and so we work with a variety of people on that one, although we do maintain some of the Quaker testimonies, spices, which is on your screen now, what that is, simplicity, and we will show that. Yeah. But that's how it started, and then it's grown, because it used to be local. It used to be just Kenya, and then we would do a training in Olympia, and then we did a training, you know, and it kept growing and growing, and it is now. And
we'll promote the website friendlywater.net.
They can do more stories there, exactly.
And there's lots of stuff. It's a great website that Dennis creates and manages.
And maintains, yes.
So this is good stuff. Tell us some more about what Friendly Water does in other countries. We've covered some of this. Are there other things we need to say about the actual activities that you folks do in other countries?
Well, you know, Wayne would be a good one, because he's had experiences in India, Uganda, and Burundi.
Well, to date, our primary focus is teaching sanitation and hygiene along with the BioSand water filter. There are many other good technologies. This summer I was able to spend 4.5 days helping to build a ferro-cement rainwater catchment tank, which fits ideally with the BioSand water filters. And in many cases, NGOs, well-intentioned, have gone in and dug wells, but the responsibility is not left to the people in the community. The ownership has never really been transferred, and when something breaks or something's stolen off the well, it becomes abandoned, and there are many, many abandoned wells. And one of the things I personally want to do is get trained back east in Louisville, Kentucky this spring to repair some of these wells in conjunction with Rotary clubs, possibly fix some of them.
I understand that you were not much of a traveler before this, and
No,
this really got you hooked into this.
A little over a year ago, I had never had a passport before, so...
and now you've
His world was Greater Yelm, although he lived in Lesser Yelm.
Yeah.
So yeah, last year I spent nearly 3 months out of the country.
Yeah.
3.5 weeks in India, doing 2 trainings, another 5 weeks in Uganda, doing 1 training in Gulu in the northern part. Some other work there, including the ferro-cement catchment tank. And then we did another training in Rutuvu, Burundi, through a couple that we met that live in Everett. He's a Boeing engineer.
He also took his then 12-year-old son, Noah, who's now 13. And
who's our youngest board member right now.
Yes, and he's built probably more BioSand water filters than most people in the United States have.
Okay. Ginny, can you tell us something about partnering with other organizations to do this work?
I mean, that's one of the things that I think makes Friendly Water unique. There are a number of good organizations like Rotary that are famous for the water projects that they do, and they tend to work more with developed communities. And what makes Friendly Water so unique and the BioSand filter is we can go into places that aren't yet ready for that. Places that may not have water systems. They're getting their water from puddles, from the roof, from rivers, from creeks, and it looks like coffee and it comes out clean. And so every country where we work, there's a different model. And in Burundi, we've worked with cooperatives between literally co-ops that were formed from Hutus and Tutsis working together to make clean water available. In Kenya, we've started teaching young men how to build filters and make them into businesses that could be self-sustaining. And we're even developing some cooperative programs where we're trying to develop with industries in the area revolving loan program so that people can buy their filters over time and support not only their own water quality, their clean water needs, but also provide a local employment for people. So there's a different model depending upon which country we're in, but the model is really about making this a self-sustaining tool where it best fits, appropriate technology in the truest sense of the word.
And you have a lot of satisfied customers. I know, Dennis, when we were preparing for this interview on the telephone, you told me about some satisfied, what you would call satisfied customers in the business world, and you got people.
Well, and there's one, and we're showing his picture now, and that is Anania, and he is a Kororero village leader, and this particular area is interesting in the fact that these are from the Twa community, which we say are pygmies in our language, but he said that thank you, because we know that the sustained action of Friendly Water for the World is the first intervention toward the development of Kororero since the world began. And that was quite a statement for him. And another young man is Kanka, and he said that this was an opportunity for a pygmy to become a real technician is rare, and to do so with BioSand Water Filters is a great opportunity. And every place that we've installed these filters, we've asked them not only to have their picture taken, but how well it's gone. And their sicknesses have ended, their trips to the hospital have ended, the person's been able to go back to work, the kids are in school, you know, and so we're getting testimony after testimony. And if you go to friendlywater.net, you'll see some of the stories there in the pictures, and they're very inspiring.
You told me about an orphanage in Uganda where the orphans there had lots of health problems.
Yeah, this is a small orphanage. It was a private orphanage we had never heard of before. They had some almost, what, 400 kids?
400 students, and they had an incredibly high infant mortality rate, or young child mortality rate.
You know, and they would try
dysentery.
to adopt these kids, but the kids were dying before they could get them adopted. And this is in Kagezi, and one of our
partners in Uganda
had a real heart for this. He made 2 filters, put them on the bus along with sacks of gravel and sand, and drove the equivalent of what, 200 and some miles?
I think so.
And installed the filters for the school, and we later learned that only 2. Well, that's not enough for your community. However, within 3 weeks, all the dysentery had ended. All the diseases had ended. There were no more stomach issues.
The endemic dysentery and diarrhea that had been a part of the life in that had gone away, and now they were just dealing with normal childhood coughs and colds. Kids were surviving, and that was just the presence of clean water, being able to have that. And we've found the same story in other places, and you know, and as Dennis can point out from other stories, one of the challenges in much of the world, but certainly in Africa, is the impact, the long-term impact of HIV and AIDS. And one of the critical, even in the presence of drugs for treatment, if there's not clean water, they die from opportunistic infections. And so one of our partnerships, both in Burundi and in Congo and in Uganda and elsewhere, has been an outreach to try to get filters in clinics and schools, orphanages, and with families that are struggling with HIV/AIDS. And so
they get the medicine they need, but they need the clean water to take it in order to be effective.
Well, the drugs effectiveness is actually diminished by 80% without clean water.
Oh, okay.
And so it's an answer. Besides the dramatic changes that you can see in an individual's family, having this and having it done locally, it's done by people, and it's fostering, if you will, local philanthropy.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful synergy that grows from
Glenn, your organization, my organization, Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation,
really
fits so in tune with what we're doing, because we brought ex-child soldiers and the widows who were created by those ex-child soldiers together to reconcile and build BioSand Water Filters and teach health and sanitation and install these filters.
The wonderful part of the story, not only the the program, we're working with a peace and reconciliation team in Africa called the African Great Lakes Initiative. But in that particular case that Dennis was referring to, the widows taught the soldiers how to build the filters because we'd already had a class to teach the widows how to build the filters.
Well, this whole self-reliance aspect that a number of you have, all three of you have mentioned, where people, because it's appropriate technology and it's geared towards simple stuff that people can learn and do, people become self-reliant instead of dependent on Americans, Europeans, and whatever. Can you tell us something more about the self-reliance?
I mean, we Friendly Water for the World can't be everywhere people need water. And to be honest, it costs a lot of money to send a team of Americans to Uganda to work. And the smartest way to take the investors' dollars that we get is to go in and teach local people how to build it, how to turn it into businesses. We're talking in countries where the average income might be $230 a year to $280. So if we can work with them and help them build a locally appropriate business that makes filters available to their community members at rates they can afford, then the multiplying effect goes out and they don't need us to do it. And we actually have run into some skepticism in a few places that we've been trying to get financing on a grant for a project in Congo, and they liked the project and they really wanted to support us, but they were very hesitant to give us the grant because we weren't sending any Americans or Europeans over to run the project. And we eventually succeeded in convincing them that the fellow that we have over there who's running the project, he's a surgeon. He stopped being a full-time surgeon to be able to work BioSand projects in refugee camps. They don't need us there at that point. And so that's the model of self-reliance.
And there's the appropriateness where you tailor it for each local area. And you can tell us when people that are well-known and well-loved in Olympia, Larry Kirshner and Doug Mackey and Jody Mackey went to Afghanistan.
One of our first projects we had, as Dennis mentioned, we started working with Del and Suzanne Livingston, who'd been already well established in East Africa, Kenya, but our first summer we did a training in Anacortes, and we invited people from across Washington and Western Canada to join us, and they did, and Doug Mackey came to the class. And he learned how to build biosand filters along with the rest of us. And from that moment on, he had a vision. He wanted to work with Larry and Jody and get a biosand project going in Afghanistan and to work with amputees and others. Well, the project was, we actually partnered with a Danish nonprofit organization, and they went into Africa and they ran the BioSand project and they taught the Danish NGO people how to run BioSand filter training programs. But when we finished, as we go in and we often make these filter molds available, one of the things they had to find out was, well, who do we leave the filter with? If we leave the mold within Afghanistan, do we leave it with the Danish NGO? But then where does it go? And in the community where they were, they left it with the Jirga to make the decision.
The
local governing authority became,
body.
And that was the cement to the project because
now there's different ethnicities there that didn't always get along.
Yeah, and the Jirga is the very grassroots decision-making body for the community.
Elders.
And they take on the responsibility of then deciding how to keep this moving in the community.
So that's good appropriateness.
And definitely a local vision. That's how we capitalize on brilliant volunteers with great ideas.
In Ethiopia, we have a young man that's just incredible, Abraham, who owns a guest house, and people come from missions that are getting ready to go into Ethiopia. They'll stay at his guest house, the Lofto guest house, and then they'll go out to wherever they're going. Or if you're going to adopt a child, they will stay there until the paperwork is through. He learned how to make filters from
our videos.
That we produce. And we says, you know what? It's best if you come and take a local training and improve upon what you're doing. And he did. And now he has people come and they stay at his guest house, but they produce filters and then they go into the community, install them, and that's part of his idea, and that was something we never thought of.
He came to us after he'd already started building filters and placing them in the orphanages around the community of Addis Ababa. And so then he built on it as potential adopted parents would come. He'd put them to work building filters that would go into the orphanages where the children were coming from. And so as a result, there's a whole network of adoptee families that want to help support the work that Abraham's doing in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And which is kind of a tangential piece. We're kind of the glue, the mortar between a lot of different sized bricks.
You've also got some information, Ginny, about how people have been able to finance these locally in an appropriate way.
We're just starting to do, in Burundi we started with the simplest, where it was a co-op, and we partnered half and half. If you had someone who was willing to pay for half a filter, we'd find somebody here who would pay the other half. But we realized that wasn't as sustainable as we wanted, and so both in Kenya and now in Burundi, we are developing, working with local partners there to develop, if you will, a sustaining fund. We'll help a local organization get started, and part of it will set up a program so that residents can buy their filter, their own filter, over time, maybe $1 to $2 a month. And with the revolving loan fund, we provide the initial capital, but over a few years, it will be self-sustaining. They won't need our money to keep paying the salary of people who build the filters, who put them in the communities and teach people how to use them, or for the people who are buying the filters, they're buying their own filter.
Glenn, that's why we often jokingly refer to Friendly Water for the World as the anti-charity charity.
Yeah.
And because we empower people to do it themselves.
Yeah, it's very different from a dependency model.
It's, and each country we're finding has a different culture and a different set of needs, and we have to be adaptable to figure out which one is the right strategy.
In fact, if our viewing audience wants more information on this, there is a book called Toxic Charity, and that's a book that all of our board members have been encouraged to read, because it's part of the principles that guide us here in the United States.
People need to know that Friendly Water here is all volunteer.
Yes.
And you are sustained by voluntary donations. You're not a government program. You don't have paid staff.
We are a 501c3 organization.
We are a federally recognized nonprofit.
And also Washington Department of Employees, or Washington Employees.
We're part of the Combined Fund Drive. We've been successfully enrolled in the Combined Fund Drive now for a few years, and that generates a relatively steady stream of income thanks to the contributions from employees in the state. We have a 501c3. There are religious organizations across the United States that have adopted us for the holidays as alternatives to traditional Christmases. We raise additional funds by selling tailored water. Don't give a gift, give a card, and give a filter kind of a program. But we are a volunteer organization. Our board is all volunteer. The people who go overseas are volunteers. And so we are always looking for more people to join us, to participate, to come to our training. We run a training every year to teach people how to build biosand filters, and in that we network. And we find the passions that ignite people. Yeah,
you told me on the phone that for anybody that wants to help, they can find some unique niche. There's some way to help out in some way. I know Dennis Mills is taking naps as a way.
Exactly.
Tell us
that story.
Well, when I turned 70, I'm 71 now, when I turned 70, my wife says, "What do you want for your birthday?" I must have been exhausted by the time she asked me that.
Well, you're one of the busiest people in Olympia.
Exactly. He didn't get that Volunteer of the Year for nothing reward.
He's doing everything.
So I said, I just want to take a nap. Well, David Albert heard that, that's it.
Yeah, David's one of the key people in Friendly Water.
He's our chairperson right now.
Chairperson right now. And he says, "We'll get people to pay you to take naps." So we started another website, napforlife.net, where people pay me $25 an hour to take a nap. So far I've built about 30 filters taking naps.
People sign up and they're continuing.
We encourage napathons, solidarity
corporate napsters, and we've actually I don't know if we've trademarked or registered the name Nap for Life, so it's we're there. But we'll be creative. We have all kinds of ways of raising funds.
Well, that's one of the fun things about a local nonprofit that has some wit as well as heart, is that you can find ways to get people involved. You got something to say?
Oh, no, I got started with these. I saw the filter and its technology demonstrated at an hour-for-hour time bank, and I thought, there's a lot of people in Thurston County that live in remote and kind of rough conditions, and they could use these, or in the green building industry for rainwater catchment purposes. And I thought, you know, I might be able to make a small business here, and was looking for some stay-at-home, and I built a few, and then it didn't work out. But since then, I've got more and more involved.
Then we started drafting him to our trainings.
That's why we now have to file disclaimer statements, Glenn. Like if you come to a training, warning, you may find yourself in a foreign country within a short period of time.
So you already had professional background with energy systems, or
my background is alternative energy and heating systems, high efficiency heating systems.
So this is a very different end of things.
It's the very low tech, high impact, and that has been the thrust of my focus. I mean, there's other technologies like the rainwater catchment and rocket stoves. And
we're also excited that his 13-year-old son has been able to go along with him on some of these foreign trips, and that has an impact upon young people as they see they can do it too.
As you said, we might warn people, be careful about coming to our training because you might be overseas. The other one is, this will change your life. It's not just the people whose homes these go in. This Friendly Water has offered for all the board members and the friends of Friendly Water who participate an opportunity to change their own lives as well as to make a change in somebody else's life.
Yeah, my impression is that you're doing a lot of stuff now, and my impression is if you had more volunteers, you could multiply that, and if you had more income, you could multiply that.
It's true, and we've been on an exponential growth path. We've only been in existence since 2010, and I think our first year budget was $7,000. Well, last year, through the generosity of the communities in the Northwest and actually around the world, we've been able to pass through $90,000 worth of funds that have come to us, and we're filling that in 10 countries. So if we have more volunteers and more donations, we can reach out to more countries and programs.
We have more requests than we can
possibly handle.
And as an all-volunteer organization, instead of paying some big staff salaries, that money is going right into
our biggest overhead is mailings to tell people how we're using their funds and what we're doing.
But I mean, so the money goes right into the
money all goes into the projects.
And that has been recognized by great nonprofits.
The place
on the website. So if you go to the website and down at the bottom, you will see 2 different organizations that have endorsed Friendly Water for the World, and that's been because we really use investors' money wisely.
Yeah, I went to I'd heard you told me about that, so I went to their website today before taping the program, and great nonprofits rate gives you got 5 stars.
We were able to partner with One Day's Wages out of Seattle, which is another locally grown nonprofit that kind of works on the premise that if everybody took 1 day's wage, they could end world hunger and other things, and donated it. And we applied to a grant for them early on, and they said, well, you guys are kind of new, and we really believe in transparency, so we want to wait a little while. Well, they came back to us, it was the year before last, and said, we'll give you a micro grant. If you can raise $2,500 in 5 days using our website and things like that, we'll fund a project. What would you like?
So how many hours was it, Jenny?
We raised over $12,000 in a week, and they were just blown away. And we couldn't have done it without their support and their help, but as a result of that, instead of being able to fund 5 filters or 5 molds, we were able to put in 10 and 15 molds in countries that we wouldn't have been able to do. So,
and then each mold then
can make a
lots
filter
and lots
a day.
And lots.
Once a mold, that's really our biggest capital investment in a training program, besides the human capital of teaching people and providing support, is to go in and make these molds available free of charge to our partners over there, wherever they are, whether they're a small cooperative or a young struggling company that's going to try to start. As long as they're using them to make filters available to their community, they're not free, but we'll make the filter molds available to them.
So that's the steel mold, and with that mold they can make, did you say one
a day
concrete filter per day?
They pour it a day, and then they can take that steel mold apart, and then they let that
And I just read in one of the newsletters, there's one particular NGO in India that's been using the same steel molds for 6 or 7 years now.
So not only is the filter indestructible for the most part, the construction materials are going, but we learned, because when we first started making it, we'd make the mold available to people, and we'd learned that there's secrets to building a durable mold that we learned over time. We also learned some other important things. You can't send someone a mold if you don't give them a toolkit, because tools can disappear. And then the next lesson we learned was, you know, we need to give people a clean bucket of water, because part of the lesson is you don't put the clean water in the bucket the dirty water came in. And so you could tell people that, but if you give them a bucket that goes with the filter, it makes it last.
And some of our friends have used that for a micro business of securing these clean buckets and then selling that to support their work that they do in BioSand Water Filters.
Well, we've got a few minutes left. I want to make sure that we put in a little hustle for, you got a Friday, May 15, 2005 event at Capitol Theater in Olympia?
We do. We have a special fundraising event. We'll be partnering with the Olympia Film Society and using their facilities, but a noted humanitarian scholar, Clay Jenkinson, who's famous in the United States for his Jefferson Hour. He takes on the persona of Thomas Jefferson and has conversations with people. He's going to join us. He's coming and donating his time to us, and we'll be doing an evening of Thomas Jefferson for the citizens of Olympia. And stay tuned and look to the Olympia Film Society for more information.
Well, and it'll be on your website, friendlywater.net.
It will absolutely be on our website.
People should check friendlywater.net
regularly,
often, because there are new things happening all the time, new trainings.
New events, new stories about where we've been successful, but beyond the...
And we're on Facebook, and you know, I was just looking on Facebook recently because David Albert's in India, and he's really excited about some of the events that have happened, so he'll post a picture or post something, and some of our friends overseas do the same thing.
We'll be posting on the website not only the information about the Jefferson Hour presentation, but we'll be doing a fundraising event with the Yelm Rotary following later in the month of May of 2015, and we run a training every year, and the information about how to participate in our Learn How to Build BioSand will be on the website as well.
Well, I'm on your email list, and I get emails that have these success stories and photos and news and what's happening and all that. And would they sign up for that through the website?
They can.
Yeah, they sign up for the website, and they can follow that.
And they can donate money on the website. Not that I'm not the treasurer or anything, but yes. And so there's all kinds of ways, and they can reach us through the website by sending us emails. We'll be happy to work with people interested in volunteering.
Yeah, if somebody is part of a community group that has outside speakers come in, or part of a religious congregation that might have somebody, or any kind of citizen group, community group, whatever, you folks can provide speakers, and you have a display set up here in the TV studio.
Yes, that's one of 5 displays that we do have.
So this display, which the viewers won't be able to read in detail, but you can at least see it's a viable display, and it'll fit on a long table, and it's very informative, and it really spells out the story clearly.
We go to charity fairs, we go to churches, community groups, we speak at Rotaries, schools, and generally we get a special speaker each year who we can arrange to come in and talk to about who's doing project work.
Just last Friday, Wayne spoke for a fundraising event where the Peace Choir in Olympia sang, and Safe Place was another beneficiary. And Wayne, I think, really brought down the house in few tears when what happened you made mention of?
Well, I think it was when I mentioned that these things will last for 30 years with just very little maintenance.
And then you talked about Safe Place and our involvement?
Well, yeah. Safe Place is teaming up with some ladies in the DRC.
Democratic Republic of the Congo.
These ladies are rape survivors, many of them from the war-torn regions, and there's a whole exchange of how you deal with trauma.
We're building a connection between survivors of violence in the Congo, women survivors of violence in the Congo, with women survivors of violence or tragedy here. And it's still forming, it's still burgeoning, but the connection is there, and we're continuing to build on it. And it's those kinds of connections that keep us growing and keep it strong for who the next group of people and volunteers who come.
Yeah, so for anybody watching the show who doesn't know Safe Place,
thank you.
They are a local Olympia-based group that's been around since about 1979 or thereabouts, working to help women who are suffering from domestic violence, rape, danger of that sort,
women and children,
the trauma, and the families, and a variety of services to help these folks. And how cool to find
there's a
connection with people in the Congo who've suffered.
And that there's lessons to be learned going both ways was the part that we heard from the Safe Place people who had been talking with them. It was that there was this exchange that could go through. So where that'll go, we're going to work together as it goes forward. But
well, and Safe Place has a tradition of serving communities in culturally appropriate ways. So if you're Latina, you might have different needs, or if you're African American or white, or if you're Asian or whatever. I mean, they're culturally sensitive.
And I think you bring
up. How cool to partner up with a.
Well, I think that's one of the pieces that you bring. Every time we build a new partnership with another group, we may be bringing BioSand filters, but they're bringing something that makes us as Friendly Water richer and stronger and more able to reach to another community.
Yeah. Well, we're really out of time. I want to
thank you.
I warned you, Glenn.
I know.
I warned you.
Well, it's been a good, rich hour. I want to thank Wayne and Ginny and Dennis. I want to thank the folks who've been watching. This program for the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation has been running for 28 years, and so often our topics are really heavy topics, and the solutions are possible, but they're such a long shot because they involve changing major systems like governments or changing our whole economy. And what we've done during this hour is look at something where there's a simple, low-tech solution that can make very profound changes and benefits for people's lives. And it's fun to be able to do a program like this that actually practices good solutions. Friendly Water for the World uses simple technology. It's appropriate for poor communities that lack safe drinking water. It works amazingly well, and it's culturally appropriate. It is sensitive to the people that it's interacting with, and they'll tailor it to meet the needs of the people. They also can find ways for various kinds of people to help with this project, so there's a niche for you no matter what your interests or skills may be. They accomplish good work, and they really deserve our support. You can get information about a wide variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolence by contacting the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation at 360-491-9093 or www.olympiafor.org. We are all one human family. We share one planet. We can make the world a better place, but we all have to do our part. And the world needs what you have to offer. Thanks.